The Apostle John had a very specific reason for writing a fourth gospel account after 20 years of the other three already being in circulation, a reason which he spelled out near the end of his book. In John 20:30-31, he says, Jesus performed many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not recorded in this book. But these are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. Because of this specific reason and his gospel being added to what was already out there, John was very selective in what he included and also very intentional and methodical. And one intriguing thing we find in John's gospel that we do not find in the others are the I am statements of Jesus. In the Jewish world of the time, the phrase I am was reserved for God alone. In fact, it was God's name, the name he gave when Moses asked what to call him. I am who I am. This name became so revered that the people would not say it out loud or even write it down. And yet Jesus freely used it in reference to himself, with the most dramatic instance being at the end of a lengthy debate with a group of would-be believers in John chapter 8. He ends the conversation with a statement that almost got him stoned.
Before Abraham was born, I am.
A clear reference to his eternal nature and deity. But aside from the blatant use of God's name for himself, Jesus also made 7 other specific and significant I am statements that give us a deeper understanding of who he is and just how much we need him. The first of these is found in John 6. John 6:35, he says,
I am the bread of life. Those who come to me will never be hungry. Those who believe in me will never be thirsty.
Jesus is our nourishment, our sustainer. Without him, we are desperately hungry and thirsty with no hope of meeting those needs. And of course, Jesus was talking about spiritual hunger and thirst. In fact, all of the I am statements are speaking of spiritual matters, which are far more important than physical matters. Just as Jesus himself says later in this same dialogue, the Spirit gives life, the flesh counts for nothing. 2 chapters later, John 8 records the next one.
I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will have the light of life and will never walk in darkness.
Another thing to notice about these statements is that they include the definite article. Jesus says, I am the light of the world, as opposed to a light. The, as in the one and only. Jesus is the one and only light of the world. Follow him and you will have the light of life. Follow something else, even follow yourself, and you will remain in spiritual darkness, in spiritual death. John 10 records 2 I am statements in the context of Jesus using a shepherding analogy.
I am the gate. Those who come in by me will be saved.
A sheepfold in those days consisted of a fenced-in area, usually a fence of stone, that had only one entrance. And instead of a wooden or metal gate at the opening, the gate would be a person, either a hired hand or the shepherd himself. He would sit or lay in the opening so that nothing could get in that shouldn't, and so that the sheep could not get out and wander off into danger. The gatekeeper protected the sheep from external dangers and from themselves. Jesus does the same for us. Because unlike a hired hand who cares nothing for the sheep, John 10, Jesus says,
I am the good shepherd. As the Father knows me, and I know the Father, in the same way I know my sheep, and they know me. And I am willing to die for them.
In shepherding, the sheep actually do learn the voice of their own shepherd and will not answer to another. Likewise, Jesus is saying that those who are his will know his voice, which only comes through actually knowing his words and obeying them, exactly what sheep do for their shepherd. But that is not all that Jesus says here. He also points out that as a good shepherd, he is willing to die for his sheep, and he wasn't only willing, he actually did. But he didn't stay dead, and that's because, as Jesus says in John 11,
I am the resurrection and the life. Those who believe in me will live, even though they die.
Jesus said this just before raising Lazarus from the dead. Jesus is not only the bread of life, he is life itself. And not only life, but life after death. Jesus is the resurrection. Without him, we remain dead in our sins and dead in the ground. But with him, even though our bodies die, we will yet live. just like Lazarus and just like Jesus himself. These are beautiful promises, but not for everyone. As the next and most famous I am statement makes clear, John 14:6,
I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one goes to the Father except by me.
Jesus is the only way. Jesus is the only truth. Jesus is the only life. Without him, we are lost, deceived, and dead. In fact, without him, we can do nothing. A point he spells out in the final I am statement, John 15:5.
I am the vine, and you are the branches. Those who remain in me and I in them will bear much fruit, for you can do nothing without me.
We are absolutely hopeless without Jesus, and we are phenomenally blessed with him and through him when we approach him correctly. The I am statements of Jesus leave no room for fence straddling. They draw a hard, sharp line that demands a choice, and to reject any one of them is to reject all of them, because that is ultimately rejecting Christ himself. And he makes it clear what results from that choice. Without him, we are starving and thirsty, walking in darkness, locked out of the fold, deaf to his voice, lost, deceived, and dead in our sins with no hope of resurrection, blocked from going to the Father and unable to do anything of spiritual worth. But if we eat and drink of him, if we follow him, if we enter through him, if we listen to him, believe in him, and remain in him, then we will be filled. We will walk in light. We will enter in, hear his voice, experience the resurrection, come to the Father, and bear much fruit. Jesus is the one and only everything that we need, and need him we do, because he is.